All right, emergency edition of Canucks Conversation. Hello, Canucks fans. Welcome to Canucks Conversation. My name is Dave Petrelli, joined by Harmon Dial, our technical producer, the man at the controls who got us live so quickly for this emergency edition of Canucks Convo is Jacob Lazar. Harm, when's the last time we did an emergency episode? Can you remember off the top of your head?
I don't know. I can't remember, actually. Can you?
I'm going to guess.
I know the answer because I did have to look it up. So
I was going to say it was Elias Lindholm when they traded for Elias Lindholm.
No.
Am I wrong?
We've definitely done it since
then. We did 2 emergency episodes in a 2-day span back earlier this calendar year.
Okay, tell me, for what?
When JT Miller was traded to the New York Rangers.
Oh yeah.
And then when Marcus Pettersson was acquired from the Pittsburgh Penguins using that first round pick.
We did an emergency episode for Marcus Pettersson. That feels like it kind of loses some weight that we did one for Marcus Pettersson. But anyways, let's get into it. The news of the day. Adam Foote has been named the 22nd head coach of your Vancouver Canucks. And side note, Rick Tocchet is the next head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers. Harm, there was a lot to get to today, with this news. So I want to start with the fact that it's Adam Foote, not Manny Malhotra, that got hired for this role. Farhan Lalji tweeted out that Manny's got 1 year left on his contract, because in my mind, I'm looking at it and saying, okay, well, he's probably gone after this, right? Like, the interest was going to be very real in Manny Malhotra, and it still could be. Guys are allowed to leave before their contracts are up, but the best case scenario would be Adam Foote excels as the Canucks head coach, and Manny Malhotra gets another year in Abbotsford. That'd be the best case scenario for the Canucks, is Manny Malhotra stays as the Abbotsford Canucks head coach.
Yeah, we'll see. There are still a few vacant head coaching jobs out there. I'm not sure how much traction Manny's name has gotten outside of Vancouver necessarily for those possible options. So there could be a scenario where he's back, but there's no doubt that the success he's having in Abbotsford right now, guiding that team to the third round of the AHL playoffs, is definitely going to sort of improve his stock and at least start the process of teams looking at him and going, oh, that could be an intriguing candidate.
And what would 2 years do, right? Like, what would 2 years in Abbotsford do? But yes, the news is rolling in. The people are rolling into the chat right now. Adam Foote named the next head coach of the Vancouver Canucks. Now, I wanted to bring up what Quinn Hughes said at the end of February about Adam Foote, because look, I've been Team Manny all the way. I think you and I both even said when it was coming down to Foote and when it was coming down to Manny, we said Manny's probably the better choice. It's hard to judge assistant coaches, but I'm standing by it. I wanted Manny hired. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh yeah, I've been Team Adam Foote all the way. He could be fine. He could be absolutely fine, and it wasn't to take anything away from Adam Foote. I just really think very, very highly of Manny Malhotra. But I wanted to bring up this clip from the TNT broadcast at the end of February. Quinn Hughes is asked about Adam Foote, and this is what he had to say about Adam Foote being the best coach he's ever had.
Adam Foote, the best defensive coach you've ever had. What exactly makes him the best coach that you've ever had?
Man, it's hard to break that one down, but I just find like there's a lot of coaches out there that scream and yell, and they want to bully their players, intimidate their players, and this is a guy that I would say coaches his defensemen, coaches his players like he'd want his kids coached, and then on top of that, with all the experience he has, and Rick said it before, he doesn't think of himself as a coach, he thinks of himself as a teacher, and he's just teaching us. And Footy and Rick's job is to win games, but also it's to make everyone a better player. And, you want to be a better player in March than you were September, and then hopefully a better team as well. And I think it's not just process, results-based wins and losses. It's trying to make, people, better players. And, over the course of my 3 years with these guys, my game's kind of taken off here. And that's a big part to them. So, yeah.
Now, we know Quinn Hughes is happy with this hire, obviously, but let's be honest, and let's go back to the conversations we were having about the Canucks next head coach. Was a big part of the interview process was, how are you going to get Elias Pettersson back to the player that he was? And I think that's where I probably have the biggest question mark when it comes to Foote is he going to be able to be the coach to get Pettersson back to what he was before?
Yeah, I think the offense, generally speaking, I think if we step back from just that specific storyline for a second, like the way I view it is, it's an interesting roll of the dice to hire Foote. Like you, I probably would have preferred Manny. I'm not saying this is a bad hiring by any means, and I understand it because of the familiarity factor, because of how highly Quinn Hughes regards him. I also think he's a popular coach in that locker room outside of just Quinn Hughes. I think a lot of guys in that room would be excited about playing for Adam Foote. And obviously he's had a ton of success as a defensive-minded assistant, but there are risks considering his lack of experience and whether he can be the coach to unlock consistent offense out of the team next season. Is Adam Foote the type of coach that can allow the Canucks to be more dynamic and creative off the rush? Are they going to be able to avoid a sort of rudimentary in-zone offensive attack where it's a lot of low to high, inefficient point shots? Can he find ways to encourage creativity and get that out of the group? Elias Pettersson, of course, too. Is he going to be the right personality, the right leader to get the full level of buy-in from Pettersson, and how will that relationship flourish? Even going back to Foote's days in the WHL with the Kelowna Rockets, you look at the 2018-19 season, which wasn't the season he was fired. It was his first year as head coach over there. The Kelowna Rockets were a bottom 3 team in the WHL for goals scored. I believe there were 22 teams in the league at the time. They were pretty sound defensively, but bottom 3 team offensively. So I'm sure Foote has grown a lot as a coach since then. It's been 6-7 years since that point. So I'm sure he's developed and worked on his craft, especially working alongside Tocchet at the NHL level. But the offense is probably the biggest question mark for me, as far as, is he going to have success unlocking more from this group?
Canucks are going to need a new defense coach. They're going to need a new PK coach, because those were both Adam Foote's responsibilities. And it's like you said, Harm, there is no question whether or not he's going to be a good coach for the defense. You know, I also thought about this. You can keep all of those Tocchet-isms, all those signs they have around the dressing room. Like, they have a big sign that says "meet pressure with pressure." You can keep all those, because I think Foote was a part of those kind of mantras. So they save some money there as well. You know, you don't have to get rid of those anymore. You know, I think, in all seriousness, I do think he's going to be a similar voice, and I mean that in a positive way. But yes, there are the same questions that really, like, we were going to have the same questions about Rick Tocchet if he came back next year of, okay, can they get back to producing offensively, and how is Rick Tocchet going to help them get there? So we'll see some mixed reaction. Go ahead.
What I will say around the offensive side is, I think it's crucial that in filling out the rest of their coaching staff, they find somebody who A, has experience, and B, specifically can coach offense, right? So Yogi Svechkovsky has been in charge of the power play. He's obviously a key offensive voice, or was a key offensive voice this past season. And he's a sharp mind, don't get me wrong, but he's only been an assistant for 1 year. So in my mind, they need to find somebody that can sort of compensate for some of the shortcomings that Foote may have on paper, which is the experience side, and more specifically the offensive side. We know that even if Rick Tocchet was going to be back, that they already wanted to add another assistant coach to the mix. So you'd imagine that, you know, Foote and management is going to work together to sort of find that right voice. But to me, that's one way to sort of compensate for some of Foote's potential shortcomings, is finding assistant coaches who can complement Foote's skill set.
Now, Foote was an assistant coach on a staff that heavily used its assistant coaches. Like, Rick Tocchet was always complimenting his assistant coaches, always talking to his assistant coaches, always talking about them in the media as well. So you wonder how much of that maybe not wore off, but how much of it rubbed off, I think is the right wording on Adam Foote. It's going to be interesting to see. He speaks tomorrow. We have some people in the chat asking when they're going to hear from him. It was officially announced by the Canucks today. We're going to get to Alvin's quote in a second here, but Adam Foote is going to speak tomorrow at 11 a.m. We're going to go at our regular time tomorrow. No show today beyond what we're doing right now with the emergency show, but we'll be back tomorrow at our regular time at 2 p.m. We'll break down Adam Foote's press conference, and of course, there's going to be coverage of it over on Canucks Army, all the social platforms of Canucks Army and CanucksArmy.com as well. Let's get to this quote from Patrick Allvin. This was in the press release that the team put out about why Adam Foote was the right choice. And of course, Allvin's going to speak tomorrow as well. But this is what he had to say via the statement. Adam is a strong leader, good teacher, and person who knows what it takes to build a great culture and winning attitude. His past experiences on the ice have translated nicely into a coaching style that fits our organization's goals and vision. He has worked extremely hard the past few years, gaining our players' respect and trust for his strong communication and honest, straightforward opinion. He knows this group better than anyone else we interviewed and has inside knowledge and understanding of what it will take to get us back to where we want to be. Adam brings structure, accountability, and a detail-oriented approach to his coaching, a process that will send a clear message to our group about the way we want to compete, practice, and play hockey. We're happy to have him take over as the new head coach of the Vancouver Canucks. In addition to that, Rick Tocchet reporting it is 3 years for Adam Foote as the head coach of the Canucks. 3-year deal. Now, I want to get to some chat reaction as well. We've got a lot of people coming in, but Harman, did you have any reaction to that statement from Allvin or the fact that it's 3 years for Adam Foote? Did that surprise you at all?
No, I think that's pretty standard. What I will say around the experience angle, and this is where we know even relative to the presumed candidates who hadn't been a head coach at the NHL level before, even among that group, Foote had less experience. So, for example, relative to Manny's now had the 1 year as an AHL head coach. He has had 7 years as an assistant, whereas for Foote, he's been an assistant here in Vancouver, but outside of that, doesn't have any NHL-related coaching experience. He's also never been a head coach at the pro level. It's really only been that opportunity he had in the WHL with the Kelowna Rockets. And you compare that to even somebody like Mitch Love, who had 2 years in WHL, 2 years in the AHL as head coach, and 2 years now as an assistant at the NHL level. Even Todd Nelson, who has something like 11 years as a head coach at the AHL level, 4 years as an assistant with the Dallas Stars. Even among that group, he's less experienced. But this is where I go back to Rutherford's press conference in the aftermath of Tocchet's departure. He was asked about how important, I believe it was actually Mojo asked that question, how important experience would be. And I found it interesting at the time that Rutherford highlighted how when they're looking at the experience sort of box, they're not just going to be looking at coaching experience, but rather that candidate's even experience as a leader in their playing days. And it's funny because at the time, I think most of us were focused on Manny predominantly. So I went, oh, look at how amazing Manny was as a leader during the 2011 days. And we know how as a player, he was a go-to locker room kind of glue guy. But I hadn't thought at the time how that also applies to Adam Foote, obviously. And he was a much higher profile player. We know what he did in Colorado and playing for all those Team Canada teams. So one takeaway for me is that I think part of how the Canucks are likely justifying Foote's lack of experience is by looking at how much of a leader he was back in his playing days and just having faith and confidence that will translate over.
Let's not forget, one of the best defensive defensemen of his generation. And yeah, you're right. A leader. He wore a C, right? Was he not captain?
He eventually became captain of the Avs in his last 2 years after Joe Sakic had retired and all that. And he was captain of the Columbus Blue Jackets for 3 years as well. Wore an A for the vast majority of his time in Colorado.
See, Jacob, you always say don't put you on the spot, but you literally turn on your mic. You had that ready to go when
I had his elite prospects page open already, so it made it easy.
Hell yeah. All right, let's get some reaction from the chat. Let's go to Don B, who said, I want to be proven wrong, but I don't think Foote is the person who can install a good general system and leverage an assistant to drive the offense. Look, this is going to be the biggest thing that everybody's paying attention to, and the biggest thing that Adam Foote's going to be graded on. And one thing he's going to be asked about tomorrow is how he's going to get more offense out of this team. Let's also not forget that Pacific Division winning team, he was a part of it. Like, he was a part of the coaching staff. So he's seen what can go right for this team. He also can see what can go wrong for this team as well. This one from, that one's about Tocchet, which we'll get to in a sec. This one from Quinn de Gregorio. He said, happy for Foote and glad Manny continues to grow in Abbey. I'm sure he's next in line if something happens with Foote, or I wonder if he gets a promotion to an assistant role with the big club. I'm going to say Manny's looking for a head coaching role at the NHL level. I'd love it. I'd love if he returned to Abbotsford next year. And if you're just joining us, it was reported by Farhan Lalji that he has 1 year and a club option, which those don't even matter as we found out. He's got 1 more year left on his deal in Abbotsford to be the Abbotsford Canucks head coach. So we'll see how that goes. Obviously, his stock is very, very high right now. But as Harmon also said earlier in the show, Abbotsford going on to the next round of the playoffs and looking like they're going on a bit of a run here for the Calder Cup playoffs could impact if Manny's available for this round of hiring that's going on. Now, this was one from Ashton Ryder. He said, this is a weird one, kind of like, I know the head coach walked out, so you guys are stuck with me now. Jannik Hansen, who always speaks his mind, even said it can create a weird dynamic. Let's see. That's going to be an interesting thing to kind of monitor and watch for too, is just how do the players feel about Tocchet leaving? How do they feel about Foote coming in as the new head coach? I think, I don't want to say this is how you make the best of a bad situation, but Foote is a voice that is respected in that locker room. Like, it's not just Hughes. You said it earlier as well. It's not just Hughes that likes Adam Foote, that respects Adam Foote as a coach. Obviously, Hughes is the one that people are going to focus on for good reason, but there are other players in that room that do really respect Adam Foote. So I think that matters as well when we kind of break all this down.
Yeah, I don't worry about I know the head coach walked out, so you guys are stuck with me now kind of angle, just because Foote has so much weight in that locker room and is so popular, not just because of how well he ran the defense under Tocchet, but also when you have a coach with the playing resume that Foote did, it just instantly commands respect. So to me, I would have been worried about that dynamic if it was, let's say, an assistant head coach or an assistant making the jump to head coach after Tocchet left, who didn't have much of an impressive resume as a player and wasn't really like a big name. Foote's a big name and the players are really familiar with him. He's popular. So that obviously doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to translate to on-ice success, obviously, but I don't worry about the players not being fully invested or not fully buying in because, Tocchet's left now and Foote's the leftover.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get to the other news of the day. Did you have anything else you want to say on Foote before we move?
Well, I wanted to continue on the Pettersson point you made. And again, this is where I'm going to keep harping on the value of finding the right assistant to complement Foote, because sure, maybe Foote's, because of his experience more as a defensive minded coach, maybe he's not necessarily going to be the voice who one-on-one can really resonate and connect best with Pettersson. But this is where assistant coaches can be so valuable. I mean, even going back to Pittsburgh, for example, when Rick Tocchet was an assistant with the Penguins under Mike Sullivan, Phil Kessel was sort of acquired by Jim Rutherford. He was this sort of polarizing player coming from Toronto. He was this sort of unique personality that head coaches didn't always know how to deal with. And Mike Sullivan basically just left Phil Kessel to Rick Tocchet, and those guys developed such a strong relationship. And I think that's an example of, if you find the right assistant head coach who is offensively minded, who personality-wise would know how to connect best with Pettersson, like, that can be an avenue to have success and unlock the best version of PD. It isn't always just head coach has to have the best one-on-one relationship with the player. That was honestly a huge reason why Rutherford hired Rick Tocchet in the first place, was seeing the success Tocchet had with Phil Kessel. And I think at the time, part of it was they felt like Tocchet could get the most out of JT Miller, who is also viewed as sort of this polarizing player and personality. So that's something to keep an eye on with Pettersson. Is it's not just about Foote, it's about how does the rest of the coaching staff get fleshed out.
That's a great point. That's a really, really great point, Harm. I'm glad you brought it up. Okay. And anyone else from Don B? And it's an emergency show, so we're not doing our proper segments, but Don B said this. Can we now please stop talking about what Tocchet and JT did or are doing right now? Why are we so in love with people that gave up on the team? Another person made a joke about when I said, oh, you can keep meet pressure with pressure. It's like, does meet pressure with pressure mean leaving as soon as things get tough? And I'm not saying that's what Tocchet did, but that's what someone else wrote in the chat, and I got a good laugh out of that. So in the spirit of ending the Tocchet conversation, because I don't think we have to talk about it after today, Rick Tocchet is set to become the next head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers. Now, Karn, regular listener of the show, asked this in the chat. He said, just putting my question again, did Philly hiring Tocchet today force management to hire Foote? They didn't want to lose another Quinn favorite to Philly as well, potentially, is what Karn's thinking. Now, I will say this. I'm assuming that if Foote didn't get the job here and he didn't get another head coaching job, that he was going to go on as an assistant with Rick Tocchet in Philadelphia. We said that from the start, that we thought Foote was just gone and going wherever Rick Tocchet went. But once we heard that he was starting to get some head coaching consideration, then it became, okay, well, if he becomes a head coach, obviously, or he gets the opportunity to be a head coach, obviously he's going to do that. But his backup plan probably was to go with Rick Tocchet. So I don't think it's a coincidence. I wouldn't call it a forced hire or anything like that. I don't think it's a coincidence that the Tocchet news comes today and then Foote finds out that he's going to be the head coach of the Canucks. I don't think that's a coincidence, but I don't think it was on the part of the Canucks, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think it was, oh, Rick Tocchet's going to get hired in Philly, and so we got to rush to make this decision.
Yeah,
but I'm sure they were aware of the dynamic as soon as Tocchet decided to leave, that, hey, if we want to keep Adam Foote around, it would probably require a promotion. And again, I don't think it's as simple as we don't want Adam Foote leaving the organization, so we have to promote him as head coach. They definitely went through their due diligence and obviously the interview process to ensure that they felt and believed he was the right choice to be head coach. Now, I will say this hiring is relatively swift, I'd say. Overall, just when you look at the process, how long it's been since Tocchet decided to leave versus, how quickly Foote has now been hired. I do find that sort of interesting, especially because there have been teams that had head coaching vacancies open up earlier than the Canucks who still haven't hired their head coach. And look, perhaps some of that is we're still deep into the NHL and AHL playoffs, and so some candidates may be, assistants on NHL teams like Mitch Love, or in Manny's case or Todd Nelson's case, they're head coaches at the AHL level in the playoffs right now. But this is where I go back to what Rutherford said when Tocchet initially left, which is that they wanted this to be a relatively swift process. They didn't have any names in mind at the time. Rutherford was pretty frank about acknowledging that, because up until very recently, the organization thought Rick Tocchet was going to come back. But all along, the goal was to get this done relatively quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And they accomplished that goal. Like I said, Adam Foote, I keep trying to call him Rick Tocchet. Adam Foote speaks tomorrow, introduced as the first time as Canucks head coach. Sure, there's going to be a lot of questions for him tomorrow. We'll break it all down tomorrow. And I did want to plug this as well. A couple things that I want to plug. There's a Jim Rutherford interview. You can check it out at CanucksArmy.com, but also it's on the Up Close podcast, Up Close with Stephen Brunt. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts, and it's also going to be posted, the video version. We filmed it at Rogers Arena. It's going to be posted on the Daily Faceoff YouTube channel.
It's already up on Daily Faceoff. Yeah,
excellent.
Already up on Daily Faceoff. I can put it into the YouTube chat for those who are interested.
Perfect. Yeah, so some good stuff from Jim Rutherford in that interview. Make sure you check it out. And if you want to hear more reaction to today's news with Adam Foote and, of course, Rick Tocchet as well, Adam Foote becoming the next head coach of the Vancouver Canucks, you can check out Sakaris and Price, which goes live very soon. You're going to see Jeff Patterson on that as well. And they've got a couple guests. Hang on a sec. There it is. Yeah. Okay.
Stephen
So
Brunt.
they go live at noon. Stephen Brunt is joining them, and Frank Corrado as well is going to join and talk about the hiring of Adam Foote. Make sure you check it out. Sakaris and Price. They go live at noon. Okay. Did I have anything else? I had one thing that I wanted to plug. Where'd it go? Oh yeah, I have a meme. Pull up my meme, Jacob. You're going to like this, Harm.
I actually really like that. That's funny.
And for those on the podcast, it's one of those Facebook posts where you marked safe. Like if there's like an earthquake or something, you can post to your friends that you were marked safe from earthquake or whatever. It says marked safe from Marco Sturm post-game interviews. That's the real thing that we should all be celebrating. Actually, you know what? I went back and listened to more Marco Sturm post-game interviews. I know it's a funny bit, but I'm pretty sure I was unfair to Marco Sturm, because I watched the post-game interview right after his team was eliminated as the higher seed, so he wasn't really in a talking mood. He seemed to be cracking some jokes in the other one I watched, but it is a funny bit, and I'm probably going to keep it going. So, yes. We'll close it out there. Any final thoughts?
No, I'm excited to hear from Foote tomorrow, and I'm sure there'll be a lot to unpack from that.
Yep, absolutely. So we'll be live tomorrow at 2 p.m. right here on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. We're also still going to play Family Feud, so if you haven't yet, fill out the survey. It's in our episode description on podcast and on YouTube as well. So fill out the survey, and we'll play Family Feud tomorrow. And we will see you tomorrow. For my co-host Harman Dial and our technical producer Jacob Czar, my name is Dave Wajelli. Thanks so much for tuning in to an emergency edition of Canucks Conversation.
Canucks Conversation is live Monday through Friday, every weekday at 2 p.m. over on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, and interact in the YouTube live chat every day with us, folks.